welcome back to your girl Brittany, and as promised I do have the tutorial here for you today for the Spellbook advent that I had created for the spooky inspiration. Now, even though I called it a Spellbook, you actually can utilize this book for a 12-day advent for the Christmas holidays coming up. So I mean, you can go ahead and do it up however you liked. So but this is just kind of giving you the base idea and like what I did for the Spellbook itself. So right now I am going ahead and doing all of the boxes. There's 13 boxes, y'all, so I'm not even gonna tell you all the measurements and everything. I'm just gonna have that down below in the description box as always, but otherwise I will go ahead and voice the measurements for everything else. And yeah, so just kind of like sit back, relax, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future uploads, and go ahead and give this video a thumbs up while you're at it. You know what, go ahead and hit that notification bell. I know it works for some, not for all, but do it anyway. But yeah, so I'm just making the boxes, doing all the extra scoring and everything. Now the format for this is actually the exact same for all of the boxes. So when it comes to cutting them down and everything, they're all exactly the same. So even though the majority of them are different sizes, the way you cut them are exactly the same, and I will go over that in a slower process. I'm going to show you how to cut it in various sizes so you can kind of get the idea of it. And we're going to start off with the first one, and I am going to slow it down for you. Now the box itself is really not hard, but this style of box, not a lot of people make it. So when you're so used to making it a certain way, it's kind of hard to adapt to a different way. So we're going to start with this 1/2 inch flap facing towards us, and we are going to cut on the score line. I'm cutting a little notch right now, but you're going to cut up on the score line all the way up to the next score line, and then you're going to completely remove that little tab there just up on the score line. Now you're going to go ahead and repeat that process on the other side. So again, you're going to cut up on the score line all the way down to the next score line, and then you're going to completely remove the 2 rectangular tabs there. And I know it may be of difficulty because I'm cutting my little notches out at the same time, but I will show you again without me cutting out the notches so it won't seem confusing. So now this little tiny rectangular flap, we are going to completely remove that. And then for the longer, small rectangular flap, we're going to keep that. I'm cutting notches into it right now, but we're going to keep that flap. And then this tiny little rectangular one, we are going to completely remove that one. And then we're going to cut up on the score lines on the little square tabs. Now we're going to go to the other side, and we are going to repeat the process. So I'm removing the little tiny rectangular piece, and then I'm going to cut up on the score line to create a tab, and then I'm going to cut the little notches in that longer one. We're not removing it, remember, we're just going to cut little notches in there. Now we're going to cut up on the score line again and remove the tiny little rectangular piece on our tab. Now we're going to take our adhesive and we are going to add it to our tabs. So for the inside tabs, we are going to be folding those inwards to the little flaps because that's going to be our base portion. And so the top part is our lid, and so this is going to go to the base portion, so that bottom part of the paper. And then we are going to apply our adhesive to those front tabs and fold those in as well. So we have a top flip open. So we have our base portion and then we have our top flip, and then the little tabs on the inside are kind of what holds the top down. So now I'm going to do it in a different size box. I think this one's the 2x7, and we are going to cut up on the score line all the way up to the very first. And then we are going to completely remove that rectangle. And then we're going to repeat that on the other side again. And again, creating the little notches there because it just helps with inserting and avoiding overhang. So now removing the small little rectangular piece, I'm going to cut up on the score line, and then I'm going to cut up on the score line again on the other side, and then remove the small rectangular piece, and then I'm going to cut little notches there in that little flap. Moving on over to the other side, again, removing this small little rectangular piece and cutting up on the score line. And repeating that up on the score line and then removing the small rectangular piece. So this is what it looks like. I wanted to do this in a slower version just so you can get the idea of it, because you will be repeating this process on all of your boxes. And now I'm just removing little notches off on those little flaps there, because again, it just kind of helps with overhang. And these little flaps on the side there, they will help keep your lid closed for you. So again, taking my adhesive, my handy dandy hot glue gun, and I'm doing my inner tabs, and I am folding it in so I can go ahead and adhere it. And there is an easier way of doing this as well, but I just wanted to show you in all depends on what helps you. And here I am doing it again for you one last time in a different size box. I believe this is the 1x7. And I am just, again, you just cut it up on the score line up to the next one. So I just, again, wanted to show you in the various sizes of the boxes so you have the idea. But this one is just in a faster pace. Now you need 4 pieces that measures 2 by 10, and we're going to score it at 4 and 6. And then we need 2 pieces that are 6.5 by 8, and on the short side we're going to score it at 1/2 inch and at 2.5. So we're going to go ahead and fold up on the score lines, and on that 1/2 inch piece we're going to cut little notches off of those. We're going to put these to the side. They will be coming up here shortly, but now we're going to work on the base of the book. So we're going to need 2 8x8 chipboard pieces and 1 that is 3x8, and then we're going to need 3 8.5 by 11 of your cardstock, and you're gonna add your score tape to the 11-inch side just on 2 pieces, and you're going to adhere all 3 of them together. And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to line up your chipboard so that it kind of goes over the adhered piece of the flaps. And so your spine's going to go in the middle of those papers, and then you're going to have the portions where you adhered the cardstock. Your 8x8 pieces are going to go there. And then I had used score tape for my chipboard, and I'm going to also apply glue on it to make it easier to move it around if I need to, leaving about 1/8 of an inch of a gap between your scoreboard or your chipboard pieces, so in that way you can avoid cracking. And if you have just like any excess from your cardstock, go ahead and cut that off. So right now I am prepping my paper for when I fold it over, just using my scoring tool, and then I'm going to fold it over to create my little indents. I mean, we all kind of know how to make a mini album, right? But once I get this all folded over, I'm going to cut out the little squares that were created, and then I'm going to cut it with a little notch, so again, avoiding that overhang. And I will be applying some score tape onto my flaps as well as glue, and I'll be folding that over onto my I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to prep my little folds there just to make it easier to fold over. And now we're going to take those 6.5x8 flaps, and that's where they come into play. So we're going to have one that goes at the top and one that goes at the bottom, or you can alternate on which side it goes, but just one has to be at top, one has to be at the bottom. And now I'm just going to line this up to the edge where my score line meets, and I'm going to just adhere that down onto my base of the album, or however you want to call it, spellbook. And I'm going to do that on the other side, but again, going the opposite way. So one folds up and one folds down. So from here, once we get this all going, you can go ahead and start matting the base of your spellbook. And so I have my pieces here. I have one cut a little bit shorter than the other one for a reason. So you do not want to have so much bulk on your book for when you're trying to fold it over. So you see how I'm kind of prepping it before I completely lay it down, so that way it doesn't bubble over and everything. And so I'm prepping it again. And so my next piece is going to overlap, but it's not going to overlap onto the score line, because otherwise you're gonna have lifting, you're gonna have bubbling, and it's just gonna be ugly, and we ain't got time for that. So you want to just make sure your piece is just a little bit smaller, shorter. Couldn't think of my words. You want to make sure it's a little bit shorter. You want it to overlap on your original one, but you don't want it to overlap onto your spine. Now remember those 2x10 pieces. Now you don't have to do this part, but I want to add a little decorative edge, so I'm just taking my edge punch and I am punching the edge on both sides, and I'm going to do this to all 4 pieces, so that way it just has a nicer touch to it. But these are going to be what holds those flaps down. So I am trying to line it up, make sure that I have it going perfectly. Remember, we scored it at 2 or at 4 and at 6, and so we have that 2-inch piece there that is going to be the part that folds over, and then I'm just going ahead and adhering it down to the base portion, and I'm just lining my other one up next to it. And then once I fold it over, I can kind of figure out like making sure that it goes accordingly. And then you want to go ahead and mat your pieces after that, after you get it adhered, so then that way you can go ahead and take this next step and add in your box and go ahead and finish matting all your pieces. As always, I always cut my papers 1/8 of an inch smaller than what my initial initial measurement is. So that is what I did, and then kind of like figure out how you want to do your boxes. Now the way I have my boxes set up is the way that I initially sketched it out, but you can go ahead and revamp it and have your boxes however you want to have them. Just remember that there are a couple, like there's a 1x7 box, there's two 1.5x7s, and there is a 2x7. So be leery about where you put those pieces, because you want to make sure that you have enough space and gap in between. So in that way, because that's why I have the flip top opening, but you still want to make sure that you have enough room. I did create a thumb notch in my boxes, so it makes it easier for the recipient to open them up. And then here I'm adding Velcro pieces onto my little flat portions, so in that way it can stay adhered. If you want to do magnets, you can go ahead and do that, but make sure that you add your magnets on before you mat your pattern paper on there. So now I'm working on the other side, and I'm again figuring out how I want to put everything on there to see if I want to change it up or anything like that. But technically the way I do have it set up is the way I originally sketched it out. Again, to each their own, do whatever makes you happy. So now I have my Velcro pieces added on to my next flap, and that is pretty much it. So if you want to add another special touch, you can go ahead and add like the folded spine to give it that real book look. So my piece here of my glitter cardstock is 6x8, and I'm just adding some score tape to my ends, and you can kind of put a feel on where you want to have it. And so it's not like if one part is further over on the book than the other part, it's okay, because you're going to be covering it up with your cards, your pattern paper anyway. But it's just a 6x8 piece, and I just kind of figured out how far out I wanted that bump to stand out. But yeah, that's it, guys. So let me know how this works out for you. I can't wait to see how it looks for you guys. Make sure you tag me on the gram if you do so, and subscribe, hit that like button.